Morgan Freeman paid 25 cents for a stranger. What happened next changed her life forever. The woman's hands trembled as she counted the coins in her palm. $3.25. It wasn't much, but today it was everything. She had walked in for a single cup of hot cocoa, a small comfort in an unforgiving world. But when the cashier told her the price, her heart sank. She was 25 cents short. And just as she turned to leave, embarrassed, a deep, familiar voice stopped her. Is kindness true power? Comment none. Or is success just luck? Comment 0. Lisa had never liked asking for help, not when she lost her job, not when her rent was overdue, not even when she skipped meals so her son could eat. She had learned long ago that the world didn't owe her kindness. So when she stepped into the cafe that morning, her expectations were low. Just a single cup of cocoa. That was all she wanted. Something warm, something comforting, something that didn't remind her of all the ways her life had unraveled. She carefully placed the coins on the counter, offering a small smile to the cashier. One small hot cocoa, please. The cashier barely glanced at her before punching in the total. That'll be $3.50. Lisa's stomach twisted. She felt the blood rush to her cheeks, the weight of humiliation settling deep in her chest. She had miscalculated. She was 25 cents short. It wasn't much, but to her it was everything. I think I'm short, she mumbled, already reaching to scoop the coins back into her pocket. I'll just... Before she could finish, a deep, warm voice cut through the moment. Give her the large one and add a caramel muffin. Lisa turned, eyes wide. Sitting just a few feet away, stirring his coffee with quiet ease, was a man she never expected to see in a place like this. Morgan Freeman. One small act of kindness. But for Lisa, it was about to change everything. Lisa's hands remained frozen mid-motion, hovering over the scattered coins on the counter. Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. Did she hear correctly? Did someone just offer to pay for her drink? She turned slowly, her heart pounding. And then she saw him. A man sitting calmly at the corner table, stirring his coffee with quiet ease. His voice, deep and familiar, had carried across the cafe like a warm embrace. His face, legendary. Morgan Freeman. Lisa's breath hitched. This wasn't just anyone offering to help her. This was a man whose voice had narrated history, whose presence had graced the silver screen, whose very existence radiated dignity and wisdom. And yet, here he was, in a simple cafe, dressed in an old coat and a wool cap, blending into the world as if he were just another person passing through. Sir, Lisa's voice cracked, but she quickly cleared her throat. She couldn't look weak in front of him. I really appreciate it, but you don't have to. Morgan met her gaze, his eyes twinkling with something between amusement and understanding. I know I don't have to, he said, his voice steady but warm. But I want to. The words hung in the air, filling the space between them like an unspoken truth. Lisa felt the tension in her shoulders ease, just slightly. The cashier, unsure of what to do, hesitated before nodding and ringing up the order. Large hot cocoa, caramel muffin, on him. As Lisa stepped aside, waiting for her drink, she could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. This wasn't just a free drink. This wasn't just a quarter she was missing. This was something more. Because deep down, Lisa knew what it felt like to be overlooked, to be the person people walked past without a second thought. And now, someone who could have ignored her like everyone else, Ayman had seen her. And that meant everything. The cashier handed Lisa the hot cocoa, the warmth of the cup seeping into her frozen fingers. She took a slow sip, letting it soothe her from the inside out. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than exhaustion. Relief. Lisa knew she should just thank him and leave, but her feet didn't move. Instead, she found herself walking toward his table. Morgan looked up, a slight smile playing at his lips. Mind if I sit? She asked. He gestured toward the empty chair across from him. "I'd be offended if you didn't." Lisa chuckled softly, setting her cup down. She hesitated before speaking again. "Why did you do that?" Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" She exhaled, shaking her head. "Pay for my drink. You don't even know me." His expression softened. "Do I need to?" Lisa blinked. She had expected pity, sympathy, maybe even charity. But this was something different. Morgan leaned back slightly, studying her. "You remind me of someone," he finally said. Lisa furrowed her brows. "Who?" He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering. "Me, many years ago." Lisa's fingers curled around her cup. She had read about his life, his struggles, his early years of hardship before fame. But hearing it now in his voice, it was different. "There was a time," he continued, "when I barely had enough to get by. There was a diner I used to go to where I could only afford a cup of coffee and maybe a slice of toast." Lisa nodded, hanging on to every word. "One morning I was short, just a few cents. I started to leave, embarrassed. But before I could, the waitress covered the rest, told me not to worry about it." Lisa swallowed hard. "What did you do?" Morgan smiled. "I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I'd do the same for someone else." Lisa felt a lump rise in her throat, because for the first time in a long time, she realized something. She wasn't alone in this struggle. Morgan Freeman had been there too, and he had made it through. Maybe, just maybe, so could she. One small act of kindness. But for Lisa, it was the beginning of something much bigger. Lisa sat across from Morgan Freeman, her fingers wrapped tightly around the warm cup of cocoa. She took a sip, letting the heat seep into her, thawing the cold she had felt not just in her body, but in her soul. Morgan sat calmly, sipping his coffee, his presence steady, unwavering, like an anchor in a storm. But Lisa? Lisa still felt adrift, because for the first time in a long time, someone had done something for her without expecting anything in return, and she didn't know how to process it. Lisa cleared her throat. "I don't usually take handouts." Morgan raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Good thing this wasn't a handout." Lisa blinked. "What do you mean?" He set his cup down carefully, his fingers tapping against the rim. "You needed a little kindness today. That's not a handout, Lisa. That's just being human." Lisa let out a soft, almost bitter laugh. "Yeah, because humanity hasn't exactly been kind to me lately." Morgan didn't flinch. He didn't give her empty words of reassurance. Instead, he simply nodded. "I know." And somehow that was exactly what she needed to hear. Lisa looked down at the steam rising from her cup. For a moment she hesitated, then something inside her cracked, a dam breaking, a weight needing to be lifted. "I lost my job last month." Morgan didn't interrupt, he just listened. "I was barely making ends meet before, but now I don't even know how I'm supposed to feed my son next week." Morgan's expression remained calm, but she saw something in his eyes. Understanding. Not pity. Not judgment. Just understanding. "Max, my son, he's everything to me," Lisa continued, her voice trembling. "I don't care if I go without food, without warmth, without sleep. But him, he deserves better, and She let out a shaky breath. "I don't know if I can give it to him anymore." Morgan exhaled slowly. "You will?" Lisa looked up. "How can you be so sure?" Morgan smiled slightly. "Because you're still here. You're still fighting, and that means you haven't given up." Tears pricked the back of Lisa's eyes, because she had wanted to give up many times. But today someone reminded her that she still mattered. Morgan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, elegant card. He slid it across the table. Lisa hesitated before picking it up. Her breath caught in her throat when she read the words. "Freeman and Carter Foundation, helping families rebuild." Her eyes snapped up. "What is this?" Morgan leaned forward. "A fresh start." Lisa shook her head. Morgan, I appreciate this, but I don't take charity." Morgan chuckled. "Lisa, this isn't charity, this is a chance." She hesitated. "For what?" "For something better." Lisa stared at him. The man who had just bought her a cup of cocoa? The man who had listened to her without judgment? The man who was now offering her a way out? And for the first time in years, she let herself hope. Lisa held the card between her fingers, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Freeman and Carter Foundation, helping families rebuild. The words felt unreal. This wasn't just a free drink. This wasn't just a kind stranger. This was an opportunity. But for someone who had spent years believing that life only took and never gave, trusting in something good wasn't easy. She looked up at Morgan, skepticism still lingering in her eyes. "Why me?" she asked softly. Morgan met her gaze with that same calm certainty. "Because you remind me of someone who just needed a little help at the right time." Lisa's fingers tightened around the card. She wanted to believe. She really did. But how many times had she trusted the wrong people? How many times had she been offered hope, only for it to be ripped away? "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. Morgan didn't push. He simply nodded. "I know, but you don't have to do it alone." Those words, they hit harder than she expected, because Lisa had always been alone. Since the day she became a mother, since the day life had thrown one hardship after another at her, she had carried it all on her own. And now, a stranger, a man she had idolized on the screen but never expected to meet in real life, Hal was offering to stand beside her. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "What exactly does this foundation do?" Morgan leaned forward slightly, sensing the shift. "We help families like yours get back on their feet. We connect parents with job opportunities, offer financial guidance, and most importantly, we remind people that they're not invisible." Lisa let out a shaky breath. Not invisible. She had felt that way for so long. And now, sitting across from Morgan Freeman in a small cafe, she wondered, was this the moment everything changed? Morgan took another sip of his coffee before speaking again. "I grew up in a small town. We didn't have much." Lisa listened intently, surprised that he was willing to share something personal. "There was a man in my neighborhood, owned a small grocery store. I used to go there as a kid, looking through the window, knowing I couldn't afford anything inside." Lisa nodded. She knew that feeling all too well. "One day," Morgan continued, "the store owner saw me staring at a loaf of bread. Instead of kicking me out, he handed it to me and said, 'When you can, pay it forward.'" Lisa's heart ached at the simplicity of it. "I never forgot that," Morgan said, his voice softer now, "and I never forgot how much one small act of kindness could change everything." Lisa's hands tightened around the cup in front of her. She had never thought about kindness as something that could ripple beyond a single moment. But now, she was starting to see it. "So what happens if I say yes?" Lisa finally asked. Morgan smiled. "You meet with my team. They help you find stable work, a place that allows you to provide for Max without sacrificing everything in return. You get support, a community." Lisa exhaled slowly. "And if I fail?" Morgan chuckled, shaking his head. "Failure isn't falling, Lisa. It's refusing to get back up." The words hit deep, because she had spent so much of her life believing that struggling meant she was failing. But now, for the first time, she considered something different. What if struggling meant she was trying? What if struggling meant she was still fighting? And what if, just this once, she didn't have to fight alone? Lisa stared at the business card again. For a long time, she had thought life had given up on her, but maybe, just maybe, she had been the one giving up on life. She looked up at Morgan. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Okay." Morgan's smile widened. "Okay," Lisa nodded, a mix of fear and hope swirling inside her. "Okay." She had spent years believing she had to survive alone, but now she was about to learn what it meant to truly live again. Lisa's heart pounded as she walked out of the cafe, the small business card still pressed between her fingers. It felt too good to be true. Help like this didn't just appear, not for people like her, She had spent years learning that the world didn't hand out second chances, and yet Morgan Freeman had just offered her one, and she had said yes. Now the real question was, could she trust it? That night, Lisa sat at the small kitchen table in her tiny apartment. Max was asleep in the next room, his quiet breathing the only sound in the house. The business card lay in front of her. Freeman and Carter Foundation, helping families rebuild. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She had been holding on to one number for nearly 3 hours. One call could change everything. One call could give her and Max the future she had long stopped believing in. But instead of dialing, her fingers hovered. Because if she called, it meant hoping. And hope was dangerous. The next morning, after a restless night of second-guessing, Lisa finally made the call. A friendly voice answered. "Freeman and Carter Foundation, this is Jessica. How can I help you?" Lisa hesitated. I was told to call. Morgan Freeman gave me this number." Silence. Then a small laugh. "I was wondering when you'd call. He told us about you." Lisa blinked. "He did?" "Yes, he said you needed a chance, and we're here to help." Lisa swallowed the lump in her throat, because for the first time in a long time, someone was offering help without making her feel like a burden. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Jessica's voice was warm. "Now we get to work." By the end of the week, Lisa had an appointment with a career counselor, a child care assistance program for Max, an interview scheduled with a company that valued single mothers. It all felt too fast, too much. But at the same time, it felt like breathing again. Morgan had told her that failure wasn't falling, it was refusing to get back up. And for the first time, Lisa was choosing to stand. A week later, Lisa sat across from Morgan Freeman again. This time it wasn't in a cafe, it was in his office at the Freeman and Carter Foundation. She had come to thank him, to tell him that she had gotten the job, that things were finally falling into place. Morgan listened quietly, nodding as she spoke. When she finished, he leaned forward. "Lisa, tell me something." Lisa tilted her head. "What? What would you have done if I hadn't stepped in that day at the cafe?" Lisa hesitated. I don't know." Morgan nodded as if he expected that answer. "And what are you going to do the next time you see someone in your shoes?" Lisa swallowed hard. She knew exactly what he was asking. Morgan didn't just want her to accept help, he wanted her to pass it forward. She exhaled slowly. "I'll help." Morgan smiled. "Good, because that's how change really happens." That night, Lisa took Max out for a small treat, hot cocoa, at the same cafe where everything had begun. As they sat at a table near the window, Max happily sipping his drink, Lisa saw something. A woman at the counter, fumbling with coins, her hands shaking, her shoulders hunched with shame. Lisa knew that feeling all too well. Without hesitation, she stood up and walked over. She reached into her pocket, pulled out $1 and placed it on the counter. The woman's eyes went wide. "Oh, I can't take this." Lisa smiled softly. "Yes, you can." The woman hesitated. Lisa simply nodded. "One day you'll do the same for someone else." Lisa had once been the woman at the counter, desperate for help. Now, she was the one offering it. And this was just the beginning. Lisa never imagined that 25 cents could change her life, but it wasn't about the money, it was about the kindness behind it. A simple act from Morgan Freeman. A man who owed her nothing, yet gave freely, had set off a chain of events that led her here. To a stable job, to a home she could finally afford, to a life where she no longer had to choose between feeding her son and feeding herself. And most importantly, to a life where she could now help others the way she had been helped. Lisa had once believed she had to fight alone. That help was just a temporary fix, that no one truly cared. But now, sitting in the same cafe where her journey had begun, watching another struggling woman hesitate to accept kindness, she understood something deeper. People weren't meant to survive alone. They were meant to lift each other up. She didn't just take Morgan's kindness and move on. She carried it forward. And that's how the world truly changes, not through grand gestures, not through wealth or fame, but through small, simple moments of human decency. As she walked out of the cafe that night, her son's hand in hers, Lisa smiled, because she knew she would never walk alone again. In the end, kindness doesn't just change lives. It creates a ripple that never stops growing. Through this story, we realize that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform lives. Morgan Freeman didn't just pay for a cup of cocoa, he restored Lisa's faith in humanity. And that faith led her to stability, hope, and a chance to help others. True worth isn't measured by wealth, but by how we treat people, especially when we expect nothing in return. Because in the end, it's not about how much you have, it's about what you give.